Alright, let's talk about psychic abilities. My intention for this video is to help people realize that they're a lot stronger than they realize, because I used to compare myself to people online a lot, and it made me feel like my abilities weren't, valid or strong or worth even talking about, because, well, first of all, I didn't know how to control them, so it's like if anybody wanted proof, I couldn't really give it to them. And then you look at people online and they talk about talking to spirits and astral traveling to alien ships and seeing past lives and stuff like that. And it sounds so matter of fact, and it sounds like it should be obvious, but it really isn't. And it took me a while to figure that out. And I just want to be that voice for you that says, yeah, you are psychic, even if you don't realize it. I think a lot more people are psychic than they realize. I've had so many different people talk about psychic experiences and abilities without realizing that's what it was. And when I told them that's what it was, they didn't believe me. Because psychic abilities are very subtle. When people ask me what it's like, I like to say that psychic senses are like the memory of senses. So, here's an example. You can hear a song perfectly in your head, but you're not actually hearing it, right? You can recall a memory or an image in your head, but you're not actually seeing it. It's kind of like that. And there are many different ways to experience psychic information and to receive it. There's a couple different ways. There's clairvoyance, which is clear sight. This is when you get a lot of visuals. There's clairsentience, which is clear feeling. It's like feeling energy, empathy, like empathic abilities, stuff like that. There's pretty much an equivalent for every sense, psychic sense. Point is that getting good at it doesn't mean that it's going to be super strong, and that when you're talking to non-physical beings that you're going to see them physically in your room. You can't expect your psychic abilities to be as strong as your physical senses, because it's not that they're not strong, it's just not as obvious. Because the stuff we're communicating with isn't on the 3D plane, you know? Getting good with your psychic abilities is a matter of learning to trust the information that you receive. It's learning to notice the subtleties and accepting it. The way that I really started to trust it and get good at it is to literally just accept everything that came through. Is when I was younger and less experienced, I would just chalk everything up as imagination, and it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to say, oh, I'm just imagining that there's a scary being in my room and it's saying mean things to me. And stuff like that. Even when you're talking to spirit guides and stuff, it's very easy to just say, oh, I made that up. But what is imagination anyway? It's just like, where does that come from? Where do your thoughts come from? It's all channeling. So if you just accept everything that comes to you, just accept it. You don't think about it at all. Just keep accepting it. Even if it's not true, it's whatever. Just doesn't matter. Just accept it. Go with it. A lot of the times, you're going to come up with stuff that you probably wouldn't have thought of. And when you get stuff like that, it's really, it's good. It's good confirmation. Here's what you can do if you want to start getting good at using your abilities, or just start practicing using them. Everybody says to meditate, and I kind of don't like that, because meditation can be hard if you have difficulty being consistent like I do. And I don't really think you have to do it one way. You don't just have to sit down and close your eyes and fall into a deep state. I think anytime you're just focusing on something, or you're chilling, you're not letting your brain race. Even just driving to work without the music on, I think could be considered meditation. Anytime you're kind of just in that lull, you're quieting your mind, you're allowing psychic information to come through. Or not even just allowing it, it's more like you're in a place to notice it. Your mind is quiet, your brain's not racing, so when things come through, you're like, oh, maybe that wasn't mine. When you're trying to decipher what's your thought and what's coming in from an outside source, it's not always easy. You get better at recognizing it the more you practice. For me, though, one of the best ways to know is if it comes out of absolutely nowhere. If you get a sentence, an image, something like that, that isn't related to anything you were thinking of recently, chances are that was some kind of non-physical being. Another good way to know if you're getting communications from interdimensional beings or spirits or anything like that is a lot of times they'll use two words on top of each other, or two sentences even. They usually just mean the same thing or different ways of saying it, but it's kind of like explaining the full meaning of what they're trying to get across in two different ways on top of one another, if you that makes sense. And if you start channeling, you'll know what I mean. But just because you're communicating with other beings doesn't always mean they're going to be good. Just beware. A lot of the times when you're first starting out, you're going to attract negative beings. That's what I did. I had no idea what I was doing when I was just starting to branch out with my abilities and communicate with non-physical beings. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was communicating with my own psychic abilities, and then they told me that they were spirit guides or guardian angels or something like that. And they like got me to trust them at first, and then they just weren't good. They weren't good beings, but I wanted to believe that they were. And so I didn't stop communicating with them, and then they just kind of got into my brain and needled me, and they weren't very nice. Just try to cool it on communicating with non-physical beings, unless that's what you're drawn to. I mean, I don't say don't do it ever. I would just learn how to protect yourself first, learn a little discernment. Another thing about ESP, which is just another way of saying psychic abilities, is that it's not all just seeing the future, which is, I think, what a lot of people think of when you say psychic. Somebody who can see the future, that's so Raven. But it's not all that. For me, I mostly don't look at the future. I mean, I kind of know what's coming, but at the same time, it's like, am I creating that? Or am I tuning into what path I'm on? The future, it changes. It depends on your choices. It's not always going to be set in stone. So that's just kind of, I don't know, not even on my radar. I mostly feel things. Like, I can feel what other people are feeling. I can kind of tell what kind of person somebody is just by meeting them or talking to them barely, not really knowing anything about them because I was told anything about them. I can feel the energy in different rooms, different objects. I don't get visions very often, but that is a thing. When I do see other creatures like ghosts and stuff like that, it is kind of like a memory. It's like a mental image superimposed over reality. When people online talk about seeing ghosts and aliens and stuff like that, this is usually what they mean. But it sounds like they're actually seeing it, and it makes you think, why can't I see it like that? Or at least that's how I felt. I think a lot of psychics, and especially starseeds, can feel like they have a low self-worth if their psychic abilities aren't obvious or easy to control right away. Feel like I can't contribute, I'm not one of you, like I can't do what you do. It's just kind of frustrating. I mean, you just can't compare yourself to other people. The people who are online have been practicing with their abilities long enough to be confident enough to share their experiences. They went through awkward phases too. Nobody just gets it right away. Well, some people do. I know I've inherently knew how to use a lot of my different abilities for a lot of my life, but I felt like it should have been a different way. And so I never really appreciated it or even realized I was using psychic abilities. Not really sure where else I'm going with this, but yeah, I just wanted you guys to know that your abilities are valid, even if they are subtle, even if you're not experiencing it the way you expect that you should be. You are valid, and so are your abilities. You are more psychic than you know. And the best way to get in touch with them is just to be kind of quiet and meditative. See, I kind of hate that, but yeah, to just practice with them. And there's really no pressure to develop them either. Like, if you're not at the best time in your life where developing psychic abilities is a priority, then don't do it. I think it comes naturally a lot of times when you just clear away the junk, when you do the shadow work, and you release a lot of painful patterns and thought patterns and habits. Once you just kind of clean yourself out, I think they rise to the surface more. That was my experience. And I was able to trust myself more too. When you develop self-love, you're more forgiving and you don't beat up on yourself for not being as strong as people you see online. So yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know. If anybody has any more questions about psychic abilities, I would love to answer them. I've been a psychic my whole life, and I have experience, so I can answer those questions based on my experience at least, and my intuition. I can channel and all that good stuff. So, if there's anything people want me to talk about, I would be glad to. Don't expect any viewers at this point, but you never know. Alright, bye, I guess.